You're listening to Underground USA News.
Sunday, August 31st, 2025, as Chicagoans gathered to celebrate Labor Day weekend, the city was once again gripped by a wave of gun violence, with at least 35 people shot, 5 fatally, according to police reports. The bloodshed included a woman killed in a South Shore apartment, a man gunned down in East Garfield Park, and a 43-year-old woman fatally shot in Altgeld Gardens, among other incidents. These shootings underscore the persistent challenge of unabated urban crime, with no arrests reported in most cases, raising questions about the effectiveness of current policing strategies and the need for stronger measures to restore order and protect communities. The looming possibility of National Guard deployment, as mentioned in discussions tied to the Trump administration, reflects growing frustration with the city's inability to curb such violence. The Trump administration plans to deploy over 200 Department of Homeland Security officers to Chicago, utilizing a naval base outside the city as a staging area for a significant immigration enforcement operation set to begin as early as September 5, 2025. This action, part of President Trump's broader commitment to public safety and border security, mirrors previous operations in Los Angeles and aims to target criminal illegal aliens in sanctuary cities like Chicago, which has resisted federal cooperation, despite pushback from local Democrat leaders, including Mayor Brandon Johnson, who issued an executive order to limit city police collaboration with federal agents. The administration emphasizes the necessity of these measures to protect American communities from crime. The operation underscores Trump's promise to prioritize law and order with plans, potentially extending to other cities like New York and Boston. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson signed an executive order on August 30th, directing city agencies to resist federal immigration enforcement and potential troop deployments by the Trump administration, signaling a bold stand against what he calls federal overreach. The hypocritically named Protecting Chicago initiative prohibits local police from collaborating with federal agents on immigration enforcement and urges federal personnel to identify themselves clearly, citing constitutional concerns. Critics, including the White House, dismissed the move as a publicity stunt, arguing that cities like Chicago should focus on addressing crime rather than obstructing federal efforts to ensure public safety. While Johnson claims the order protects Chicagoans' rights, its legal impact remains uncertain, as federal authority supersedes local directives, especially given reported plans for immigration crackdowns. President Trump's aggressive approach to crime has bolstered his approval ratings, with 53% of Americans supporting his policies, according to a recent AP-NORC poll, outpacing his ratings on immigration and the economy. While Democrats express unease with federal interventions, such as National Guard deployments in Washington, D.C., the broader public, 81%, views crime in large cities as a major issue. Critics argue the Democrat Party struggles to address urban safety effectively, leaving an opening for Trump's law and order agenda to gain traction, particularly among independents and conservative voters. Zohran Mamdani, the Democrat nominee for New York City mayor and a self-described democratic socialist, is facing scrutiny over his ties to the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, which seeks to dismantle and move beyond capitalism, according to a report by Just the News. Mamdani's platform, including city-run grocery stores, free buses, and decriminalizing certain crimes, aligns with the DSA's radical vision, raising alarms among conservatives about the potential erosion of free market principles and public safety in America's largest city. Critics, including former Governor Andrew Cuomo and Republican leaders, argue that Mamdani's policies could destabilize the city's economy and embolden far-left ideologies nationwide, while his campaign insists he focuses on affordability, without fully endorsing the DSA's more extreme positions. As the November 2025 election nears, Mamdani's lead in polls highlights a growing divide within the Democrat Party, with implications for national politics. Callie Means, White House senior advisor for the Make America Healthy Again initiative, exposed a disturbing memo circulating within the CDC and HHS that outlines strategies to subvert President Trump and HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s health reform agenda. During an interview, Means revealed that the memo, uncovered amid a CDC walkout protest in Atlanta, encourages staff to resist reforms, including Kennedy's decision to remove the COVID vaccine from the recommended schedule for children, a move supported by 95% of parents and 85% of healthcare workers. Means called for the immediate dismissal and potential criminal charges against those orchestrating this effort, arguing it defies the American people's demand for a healthier nation free from Big Pharma's grip. This revelation underscores a broader battle against entrenched bureaucracies resisting Trump's mandate to overhaul a failing healthcare system. President Trump has declared his intention to issue an executive order requiring voter identification for all federal elections, emphasizing the need for secure voting processes to restore public trust in the electoral system. In a social media post on August 30th, Trump stated, "Voter ID must be part of every single vote, no exceptions," while also advocating for restrictions on mail-in voting, except for the very ill and military personnel stationed abroad. This move follows a previous attempt in March 2025, partially blocked by a federal judge, which sought to enforce proof of citizenship requirements. Critics argue that the order may overstep presidential authority, as states primarily oversee federal elections. However, supporters view it as a necessary step to combat perceived vulnerabilities in the voting process ahead of the 2026 midterms. Maryland Governor Wes Moore has expressed willingness to accept federal support to address Baltimore's persistent crime problem, a city ranked third in per capita violent crime, according to 2024 FBI data. While Moore has touted a 20% statewide homicide reduction since taking office in 2023, a statistic under suspicion, critics argue the city's crime rate, 9 times higher than Washington, D.C. in recent weeks, demands more aggressive action. Moore's openness to federal assistance comes after a heated exchange with President Trump, who threatened to deploy the National Guard and reconsider funding for the Francis Scott Key Bridge rebuild, highlighting the city's ongoing struggles. Moore's shift toward welcoming federal resources, such as license plate readers, suggests a pragmatic acknowledgement of Baltimore's challenges, though he remains opposed to National Guard deployment. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi fired Department of Justice paralegal Elizabeth Baxter for her brazen disrespect toward National Guard members deployed in Washington, D.C. as part of President Trump's initiative to curb crime in the Capitol. On August 18th, Baxter allegedly made an obscene gesture and hurled profanities at National Guard troops at the Metro Center metro stop, later boasting about her actions to a DOJ security guard. This marks the second such termination this month following a similar incident involving another DOJ employee, signaling Bondi's firm's stance against insubordination and disrespect for law enforcement. The Trump administration's deployment of federal forces, including the National Guard, aims to restore order in D.C., with reported crime reductions, including a 67% drop in carjackings and 57% decrease in murders, underscoring the necessity of these measures despite criticism from some quarters. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has fired 24 FEMA IT employees, including top officials like Chief Information Officer Charles Armstrong and Chief Information Security Officer Gregory Edwards, for neglecting critical cybersecurity protocols, allowing a threat actor to breach FEMA's network. Noem, aligning with President Trump's push to overhaul the agency, accused the workers of incompetence and covering up vulnerabilities rather than protecting American data, labeling them as entrenched bureaucrats obstructing reform. While no sensitive data was extracted, the incident, uncovered during a routine DHS review, highlights ongoing tensions as the Trump administration seeks to refocus FEMA on state-led disaster response. Critics within FEMA claim the fired leaders were competent, suggesting the terminations may reflect broader political purges, though Noem insists the move prioritizes national security. Minnesota Bishop Robert Barron delivered a powerful rebuke to Democrats, including Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and MSNBC's Jen Psaki, for mocking prayer in the wake of a tragic shooting at Annunciation Catholic Parish. Barron called their dismissal of prayer as completely asinine, emphasizing that prayer is a vital response to tragedy, complementing decisive action, as exemplified by Martin Luther King Jr. He dismantled their arguments by pointing to Jesus' own prayers during his crucifixion, highlighting that faith does not negate suffering, but offers solace and purpose amid it. This surge in anti-Christian rhetoric, particularly following an attack with apparent anti-Catholic motives, underscores a troubling trend among progressive leaders who dismiss the deeply held beliefs of many Americans. The Trump administration is steadfastly pursuing trade negotiations with global partners, undeterred by a recent U.S. appeals court ruling declaring many of President Trump's tariffs, including reciprocal tariffs and those targeting China, Canada, and Mexico, as illegal. U.S. Trade Representative Jamison Greer emphasized that trading partners remain engaged, with ongoing discussions signaling confidence in America's economic strategy. The administration is exploring alternative legal pathways, such as Section 338 of the 1930 Trade Act, to maintain tariff leverage, while President Trump vows to appeal the decision to the Supreme Court, which could uphold his trade policies given its conservative majority. A recent survey reveals that half of U.S. public schools have adopted equitable grading practices, such as banning zeros, eliminating late penalties, and allowing unlimited test retakes in an effort to reduce disparities among students. However, a striking 81% of teachers, including 80% of teachers of color, argue these policies harm student engagement by fostering entitlement and undermining accountability, with many warning of rampant grade inflation. Critics, including educators, contend that such measures lower academic standards and fail to prepare students for real-world challenges, where deadlines and performance matter. The push for these policies, often driven by administrators rather than classroom teachers, has ignited a broader debate about balancing fairness with rigor in education. In a brazen display of criminal audacity, Zhai Dongjiang, a Chinese national and alleged fentanyl financier known as Chino, escaped house arrest in Mexico City through a tunnel, evading U.S. extradition just as prosecutors filed a detailed detention motion on July 11th. Zhang, a key figure linking Chinese chemical suppliers to Mexico's Sinaloa and Jalisco Nueva Generación cartels, facilitated the flow of fentanyl precursors that fuel America's deadly opioid crisis, claiming tens of thousands of lives annually. His escape, reminiscent of El Chapo Guzman's infamous prison break, underscores the challenges of combating transnational drug networks while raising questions about Mexico's commitment to curbing cartel operations. As the U.S. ramps up pressure through tariffs and sanctions to disrupt these networks, Zhang's flight highlights the urgent need for stronger international cooperation to dismantle the fentanyl pipeline poisoning American communities. Andriy Parubiy, a prominent Ukrainian nationalist and former parliamentary speaker, was fatally shot in broad daylight on the streets of Lviv, a brazen act that has sent shockwaves through Ukraine's political landscape. Known for his pivotal role in the 2014 Euromaidan protests and his hardline stance against Russian influence, Parubiy's assassination has sparked speculation about motives, with authorities investigating potential Russian involvement, alongside domestic political rivalries. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned the terrible murder, launching a massive manhunt for the suspect, who was reportedly disguised as a delivery courier. This high-profile killing, the latest in a series of targeted attacks, underscores the volatile undercurrents in Ukraine as it grapples with internal divisions and external pressures, raising concerns about stability in a nation already strained by war. Israel's military successfully eliminated Abu Obaida, the notorious masked spokesman for Hamas's Al-Qassam brigades, in a targeted airstrike in Gaza City on August 30th, marking a significant setback for the terrorist organization's propaganda efforts. Abu Obaida, whose real name was Hudayfa Samir Abdallah al-Khalau, was a key figure in disseminating Hamas's psychological warfare and inciting violence across the Middle East, often appearing in videos to promote the group's agenda, including its October 7, 2023 attack that killed 1,200 people and took 251 hostages. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz confirmed the strike's success, stating Obaida was sent to meet all the eliminated members of the Axis of Evil, while the IDF emphasized the operation's precision, based on Shin Bet and military intelligence, aimed at minimizing civilian casualties. Hamas initially denied the reports, labeling them as psychological warfare, but Palestinian sources later confirmed his death, underscoring the strike's impact on the group's leadership. The European Union is intensifying discussions on utilizing approximately 200 billion euros in frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine's defense and reconstruction, reflecting a pragmatic approach to holding Moscow accountable for its aggression. Proposals include creating a special fund outside EU treaties to invest these assets in higher-yield instruments, bypassing vetoes from pro-Russia states, while some EU leaders, such as Kaja Kallas, advocate for outright seizure as a form of reparative justice. Others caution against legal and financial risks, emphasizing the need to preserve the euro's credibility and avoid retaliatory actions from Russia. This strategic move aims to bolster Ukraine without burdening European taxpayers. Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto canceled a planned trip to China for a Victory Day parade marking the 80th anniversary of World War II's end, choosing instead to address escalating protests at home that have spiraled into violence, including the tragic deaths of 3 individuals in an arson attack on a parliament building in Makassar. The unrest, initially sparked by public outrage over lawmakers' pay, intensified after a police vehicle fatally struck a motorcycle rider, fueling demands for reform and accountability. This decision underscores Prabowo's prioritization of national stability over international engagements, reflecting a commitment to confronting domestic challenges head-on, even as it highlights the fragility of public trust in government institutions amid rising tensions. The conservative perspective values this focus on national sovereignty and order, emphasizing the need for strong leadership to quell chaos and restore confidence in governance. The authoritarian regime of Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega and his wife, Vice President Rosario Murillo, faces renewed scrutiny as 2 opposition leaders, Mauricio Alonso and Carlos Cardenas, have reportedly died in state custody within days of each other, signaling an intensifying clampdown on dissent. Alonso, detained on July 17th alongside his family, and Cardenas, arrested on August 15th, were vocal critics of the Ortega government, which has a documented history of suppressing opposition through arbitrary arrests and alleged torture since the 2018 protests. These deaths, the latest in a string of 5 reported opposition fatalities in custody since 2019, highlight the regime's ongoing efforts to silence critics, drawing condemnation from groups like the Great Nicaraguan Opposition Confederation, and raising alarms about human rights abuses under Ortega's iron-fisted rule.
You're listening to Underground USA News.